we now move on to discussing the policy context of circular economy. And how do we look at creating an enabling environment? We have a very, a panel with people who have been doing a lot of things for many years. And they are experts and policymakers who will identify how do you look at policy changes towards the attainment of goals of the circular economy. Today in our panel, we have Sanjeevani Yonzon Shrestha, Director, Wildlife Conservation, Nepal, Shail Shrestha, President, Cycle City Network, Sneha Pandey, Program Officer, Clean Energy Nepal, Suman Basnet, Renewable Energy and Management Professional, and then it will be moderated by Shilshila Acharya, CEO of Himalayan Climate Initiative.
Thank you, Sujivji. Good morning, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be moderating this session, which is of great interest to me as well. The world economy at the moment is only 9% circular. So, almost 91% of it is still running in the linear economy model, which just, we've been talking about this, which just is all about extracting, making, using, and discarding, and creating a lot of waste. We're going to talk about, if we were to transition towards a circular economy, what kind of policies or what kind of enabling environment we would need to have in place. To start with this session, I would like to go from Sanjeevani ji and ask each of you the same question, in terms of transitioning towards a circular economy, which are the key areas that you see as the major problems at the moment, where the policies do not align with the circular economy, and which are the areas that you see as the greatest opportunities where the policies are already aligned with or can be aligned with circular economy?
What I think of a circular economy is that it is a fundamental shift to this idea where we are saying that the linear economy model that we are currently using is a terrible, terrible model. I would like to come upon the 3 points that I think would kickstart the circular economy. You can call it in Nepal, or this is just what I'm thinking. First and foremost is what we talked about earlier, the crux of the matter, getting the general consensus or the general idea that this is not going to work anymore. This is where we establish the nature connect at a very basic human level. The second point is about policies, getting the right policies and the systems in place. It's like fostering policies and systems that actually nurture the circular economy. And for that, I think we can just look at 2 things to start off with. One is with the design. I think we touched upon that earlier also, on how we design all the products that are available in the system today. The products and systems need to be environmentally friendly. And the second part of the policy should look at the amount and the nature of waste that we are creating. And then the third point I would like to touch upon after the policy is getting connecting the dots, because I don't think circular economy, as we discussed earlier, I have to refer to everything the earlier speaker said, is about collaborations and making the dots. It cannot stand as a standalone policy. It has to have collaborations across the board.
First of all, I am the past president of Cycle City Network Nepal now. So, and I wanted to let everybody know. So, and I work with Digo Bikas Institute now, which is a young research and advocacy-based think tank. While we talk about, I think the most important aspect of today's discussion is the fact it's not circular economy itself, but of coming together to accept that systemic transformation has to come now. That's where we are right now. And I think it's very important that we become critical also about the direction that we are heading. And for me, I think in one word, there's no infinite growth in a finite planet. We need to transform from products to services being taxed, or maybe even from taxing the raw materials or the resources more than taxing the labor itself. So these are few systemic policy things that could actually encourage more of recycling. And the other thing is, if you're thinking about, because I checked into EU's circular economy package, and it talks about collaboration with China, and it talks about competitive advantage on this. And another thing, because I'm also part of this International Alliance for Localization, if we are really talking about designing out waste and designing out pollution out of the system, then we have to consider the benefit of localizing resources.
Hello everyone, I'm Sneha. I'm the program officer at Clean Energy Nepal. We're a small NGO who work with climate change, urban mobility, urbanization, waste management, air pollution, all of these things that are very relevant to achieving a circular economy. But going back to your question about problems and opportunities, I think one of the biggest problems, or you could frame it as an opportunity to that I probably see coming as we embark on this journey, is thinking about just transitions and inclusive growth. We talk a lot about the environmental benefits of circular economy. Now we have to also start thinking about what the social benefits of this would look like and how we can realize it for more vulnerable, socioeconomically vulnerable members of our community. Apart from that, I think another big opportunity that that I keep thinking, I know we talked a bit about in the last panel about how development is ratcheting up and people are finding it really hard to recycle, to segregate waste. But I still have this memory of, as a kid, exchanging my old clothes for maybe toys, or we have like home-to-home people coming from home-to-home, traders coming to take in our old clothes and give us toys and utensils for our kitchen, or of even waste recyclers coming from home-to-home today to collect and segregate our waste. So I think a bit of talking about circular economy is thinking about how to leverage that memory, or that the memory of the past that we have.
I've been doing a lot of reading on circular economy the last few days in preparation for today. And what struck me was that in the renewable energy sector in Nepal, we've been actually promoting circular economy since the last 40 years. One of the definitions I saw of a circular economy is how we can really decouple growth from consumption of finite resources. And that's what we have been doing in the renewable energy sector, trying to delink one of the fuels, no puns intended, but the fuels of economy, that is energy, from unsustainable, not renewable sources like traditional fuels, firewood, agricultural waste, and animal dung, and fossil fuels, and use more of renewable sources like the sun, the wind, the water, biomass in a sustainable manner, and human resources. Important issues that I've identified that we need to look going forward to really promote more of a circular economy is looking at planning. I think planning in Nepal in general and in energy particularly is very discrete. We are very stovepipes. So I think an integrated manner which really puts the end user in the forefront rather than a technology or a technological approach is one. The other is how do we incentivize quality, especially quality that is affordable. I think that is very important. I think the third thing that we have to look at is the utilization and recycling of assets. And especially in the energy field, because of the dramatic increase in solar home systems and solar systems that are based on battery storage, I think battery recycling and battery management is going to be a big problem.
Yeah, so I would like to actually add to that and give my next question to you only. Since you've spent a lot of your time in this energy sector, so I would love to hear really specific policies that you would recommend that the government should come up with to transform the energy sector.
It's very difficult to be prescriptive and really say this is the policies that we have. But I would like to kind of, again, just go a little into depth in what I said before. Again, I would emphasize that an integrated planning approach. In fact, I mean, the previous panelists talk about behavior change. And behavior change not only in an individual but also in a government is very important. So I think the paradigm shift in planning I think has to be brought about where we take energy as a whole and look at what do people, because people actually don't need products or technologies, they need services. And what is the best way to attain that services is a planning approach that we have to attain. So I think we need to move more towards smart subsidy, really target not subsidy to technology or to a technological approach, but maybe target it towards the end users, but more go towards certification, testing, and have a robust system where government can certify and test, and also an education and an awareness system that goes along with it, that people demand quality rather than government pushing. And I think the culture of maintenance is something that is very important. That's another behavior change, that we need to emphasize good maintenance. And lastly, I think we have to always be aware of over-regulation, because I think over-regulation stifles innovation. And I think there has to be a situation where we can work together, that there is regulation so that the growth is inclusive, but there should be innovation so that there is growth. And finally, I think one important area is the linking of academia with businesses.
So I would like to move to Shail. What kind of policies do you think would really incentivize, redesigning the products or the services moving towards the circular economy?
Thank you. I think I want to start with an example of, like, it's not just the structure of the design of the product itself, but the procedure and the design of the system as well. So in the first half, we talked a lot about water. And I think even there, if we question about like how much investment has the government done for the Melamchi water system, and how much versus how much it has invested on water recycling projects. Like maybe Tyler can say what could have been achieved in rainwater harvesting if the same amount was invested in that. So that is where, it's not even an innovation at all. It's just like accessing, analyzing the things that are already going on. And I think with that amount of money, I think a lot could have been achieved. So at the present moment, if, this opportunity of decentralizing the energy system, the energy source, or democratizing the economy might be lost if we are still focusing on like the international big investment where a big scale hydro project is produced and then the localizing of the systems are not recognized. But then as in civil society, as an NGO or as a campaign, we succeeded to bring in people and to people to judge less about the incentives that, the intentions that we have. So that's where the civil society has to play in convincing, in creating new policies that should come. So,
realizing the need of civil society interventions in this, Sanjeevani ji has been involved a lot in building curriculums, changing mindsets. So, in your experience, how do you think we can work towards changing the mindset of people and really creating a demand in their mind that now, yeah, this is the time to move?
So I come from a place where I can say that we need to go we need to go to the circular economy model 100%, and not just 70%, 30%. We'll go green in 2020 by 2%. I don't think we should start with that. We have to go circular 100%. And to create this situation, we need to make it a norm and not an option. We have to start even with the bureaucrats, the policymakers, everybody with enough experiences to make that nature connect experience for them to realize this is what we need now. And I think if we start with this, then it's much easier. I would like to go back to the human story, because everybody is a human and we respond to emotions that actually drive us. So I would think like I would start with a deadline saying there's no time, and we start now, and then that's how I think we should go forward.
Yeah. So, Sneha, like you've been focused a lot on the social and justice part. So, how do you think we can incentivize the players, especially in the service sector and informal sector, so that we can move towards a more just circular economy?
I think one of the biggest things that we need to think about as we move forward is talking about starting with sensible regulations where they're required. Other side of that is talking more about incentivizing entrepreneurs and new ways of doing the business, or remaking the system. And I think one of the things that I've been thinking, I think is quite relevant here is talking about tax breaks for sustainable solutions to the problems that we're facing today. Having said all of that, and I think we could talk a bit about subsidies here too, obviously, but I think we need to be a little bit careful when we talk about subsidies in that we need to think about how sustainable it is in the long term, and whether once that subsidy is taken away, whether that industry can recover from that or not.
Since you brought up subsidies, I'm just curious, like, with just a quick question for Sumanji, if what are the subsidies, if they are in place at the moment for fossil fuel, and do you think we should get rid of them?
Fossil fuel subsidies are something that we should get rid of, and I think we should. But there is a whole political economy that is associated with that. So how do we do that? We don't know. In Nepal, I think the situation has improved a lot because I understand that NOC was providing subsidy indirectly, fossil use was being subsidized because NOC was going on a loss, and the government had to kind of feed onto that. But I think due to the price adjustments, a lot of that has gone. But I think fossil fuels, reducing the subsidy is one, but also a realization that when fossil fuel starts to get scarce, it doesn't have to finish. It just needs to get scarce. Countries like ours will be the first ones who are impacted.
On to Sanjeevani ji, like, based on your experience now, if we were to create that kind of, hunger or that drive, how do we engage with the policymakers, and what has been your experience?
I would start with the same thing. Policymakers are human beings, and they need positive examples. And with what we have been doing at Wildlife Conservation Nepal is creating these successful examples over the years. The body of work has been enough to show that this works, this is needed, and this is the way to go forward. So my experience with the education, for example, environmental education, for the last 17 years we've been working on environmental education, making it accessible to students at school level and then for the teachers also. And the policy makers were at a juncture where they wanted to transform the school system, and we wanted to bring out a transformative change in the way we do business with our schools. So we were building the Green School Directive. So all the experience that we had garnered in 17 years came into play, and we were able to make this resource guidebook for the government based on our experiences on how to move forward. So these two policies that we've been a part of has shown us that if there is a will, if there's a body of work that you put in, then eventually there will be policy changes, or policies will actually gain a better place to transform it into a system that we would all want.
Yeah, so now I would like to move to Shail. So what specific examples or strategies do you think Nepal could adopt that we could immediately implement and we could benefit from?
I think for the context of Nepal, trying to construct as much as much part of a product from local materials is one way to go. By policy, I think investing on innovation and actually thinking of use of materials that can be recycled locally, as in at a national scale, and more as in at a local scale. And also the mapping of resources that can be maybe the government can play that role in mapping the recyclable resources or the waste that could be used somewhere else. Maybe there the investment can make more sense.
Yeah. So to Sneha again, can you give us few examples of policies, specific policies through which we could ensure that the most marginalized and the most disadvantaged people that are working in the service sector could be better protected and better incentivized for the work that they do?
I think first, with the circular economy, the biggest opportunity there, one of the biggest opportunity there is to reduce a lot of harm that our linear systems have and our extractive models and our waste disposal models have done on probably the most vulnerable of people on Earth who don't have much resources to buffer themselves from all of that destruction. When we are thinking about circular economy, the next step is thinking more about how can we not just reduce the impact on these peoples, but how can we actually have these people participate in inclusive growth in the country. So thinking along those lines is important and I think opportunistic, especially with more decentralization of responsibilities. We also need to formally recognize their rights and promote decent work conditions for them and ensure that they have access to resources through maybe training or subsidies of some sort. Thank you.
So we've already come to almost the end of the session. So my final question for all of you would be like, what's the one top suggestion for policymakers that you'd like to give from today's panel? So leaving you with that question for now, I would like to also open the floor for any Q&As.
Agency for Renewable Energy Promotion here in Nepal has published a note to interested bidder to announce their interest in bidding for a lead-acid battery recycling plant. This would be the first of its kind in Nepal. There has been a business case for a lead-acid battery recycling plant in Nepal.
So from a policy perspective, what kind of checks have you made? And going back to Suman's point of how do you not make it so complex that it becomes this entire bureaucratic process?
So first question to you, the panelists, assuming that you are sort of more knowledgeable about the subject, in what way this circular economy is different from green economy? The second and the last question, so in what way you think you can motivate the government people to make this happen? Thank you.
Yeah.
Since we are approaching towards federalism, local governments play a significant role in major decision making. In such a situation, how effectively local government can work in promoting circular economy? How have you engaged with local government? Please share these answers to all audience. Thank you.
In today's context, companies are not interested in creating the durable materials as they perceive. Do you think we can change the practices of those companies, and what is your take in changing the company behavior?
Acknowledging what Max said about the battery recycling question, I would like to come to Mr. Gyawali's question about what's the difference between green economy and circular economy. I'm not that of an expert in this, or I have not studied this thing, but from an energy perspective, I think what the circular economy does on top of the green economy, I think the green economy, a lot of focus was on renewable energy, making it green, using things. What circular economy does is combines renewable energy with energy efficiency. It says you not only go green, but you make sure that you use whatever you do efficiently. Regarding how can we incentivize bureaucrats, there has to be a recognized formal incentive mechanism where the bureaucracy, we do not only rely on their nationalism for them to do work, where the private sector and other sectors have a thing. There has to be some mechanism. Now, I don't know how that is to be done, but I think that has to be something that has to be thought of there. So we have to really think, what are the things that provincial governments or local federal governments would be better positioned to support them, and what they should do themselves. But I think local governments, I think your question about what is one suggestion to the policymakers, my suggestion is make federalism work.
I would like to address the question about industries. If I understood you correctly, you were asking how can circularity be encouraged within industries. Again, like Suman sir said earlier, it has to be a multi-pronged approach where we are influencing human behavior. We're taking psychology into human psychology into account, consumer behavior into account. Industries respond the most to consumers. So I think the change starts with us, with what we think we need and we deserve. As for your question about the suggestion for policymakers, I think one of the things that policymakers have to do critically is think about who the stakeholders are and understand the local context of any problem, and also understand who actually holds influence and who holds influence and who is ideally supposed to hold influence in any situation. So thinking more about in terms of who to include and who to exclude in our stakeholder consultations is important for policymakers.
So your last message to the policymakers?
Be careful who you choose to sit with you in the decision makers table. Yeah.
To make policies that are more, that are less regulating, but more participatory and more sort of shares the ownership of the change that we are trying to do. And I think that will help change the behavior and also the social perspective of what the government needs to do and what the private institution needs to do. I think that's a theory thing that, so we're talking about that the focus of the government should be not on trade, but on self-sufficiency at the first point, and then talk about trade, business or development, all that. So I think that will, yeah. So that helps on ensuring well-being comes first before other things. And yeah.
To make federal system work and always put national priority on environment and not just play lip service. I think that's the difference between understanding it intrinsically and then just saying that you are green and yeah, we promote green, and I hope that it happens and there's a national priority placed on environment. The way we have designed Green School is we have given 6 components for the schools to think about. 6 components, how they can start small things that can make them go green. But my priority is trying to make Green School not unlike extra curriculum, but inside the it has to be complementing the curriculum, and it will only work because of that. And once you've achieved all this, and if you still are being adventurous and you want to do so much more, then there's a component called the Learning Center, where you can do, like, you can have your own museum, you can have your pond, you can do whatever you want. We started work with local curriculum 9 years ago. So now all the municipalities are making their own local curriculums, looking at whatever resources, natural resources they have in the municipality, getting them documented, making the school children learn about their own area. And lastly, about natural resource management and waste management, we're also kind of providing technical support. Thank you.
So my request, or maybe our collective voice to the government, is that they will not have time to catch up to innovation, to explore, because they might have time to come to this event, but they will not have time to follow up to what they heard in this event, And we should publicly accept that. And we just want them to give us space for the ideas to be heard, because the civil society people are catching up, trying to follow up to the ideas that are having around innovation. So I think one of the responsible bodies that should be doing this is like a National Planning Commission. And if that had enough space for this discussion to happen while they were building their policies, then this could have made it. So I think the ball is in our court, so we should do that policy loving about giving more participatory space in a futuristic plan that the government is trying to do.
So with this, we've come to this second round of discussion. On what kind of policies we need and how to go about it. So reflecting on what I got from this session, from the key points that I'm hearing again and again is it's more about collaboration. It's about creating an ecosystem and everyone working together. And second, big theme that I heard is decentralization. It's not more about big systems and centralizing things, but moving them more towards local solutions. And then third is seeing federalism as an opportunity. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to give my like suggestion to the policymakers, but I'm just taking this liberty and saying, if there would be just one simple advice from me to policymakers and to everyone, it would be to hang out more with diverse people. That's it. Yeah, thank you all for being an amazing audience. Thank you.